Hello and welcome to the MMQB NFL podcast. There's Albert Breer. I'm Conor. Happy Black Monday, I guess, to all those who celebrate. Nobody's really celebrating. This is not a good day. And I want to just start by saying this. We're going to talk the openings today. We're going to preview the playoffs on Thursday. And if you are listening to this show and you're one of the people who left an Instagram comment on Tyler Loop's page, you're an asshole and we don't want you as a fan of this show. And so just delete yourself from our subscriber base. Did you see that?
I did
how
not.
disgusting
no.
that was.
I'm glad I did.
Good God.
Because I've seen this stuff before and it just.
Holy crap.
I mean, look, like, I'll put it this way to you. Like last Wednesday night was a tough night for me. And I did not react real well in the moment to what was happening. But I chose to keep that in, my basement where I was watching the game. So if you have this need as an adult to go lash out at somebody on a social media, just because suddenly we all have access to people that we didn't have 25 or 30 years ago, when it was probably less common because you had in 1991. You had to go through the process of like writing a letter to somebody, which means you would be like a real psycho. So like to threaten one of these guys, right?
You have to clip out all the letters from the different magazines and put them together.
You have to go through the process of writing the letter. Then you have to find the person's address.
Yeah.
Then you have to walk the envelope down to the mailbox. Then you have to put the little flag up. And then even then, like you probably have a few hours before the mailman comes to pick it up. So you have a little time to reflect there where you can reverse your decision, right? Give yourself that time to reverse your decision to do shit like this. That's all I have.
Can I just say that? And
it was funny because I had Patriots fans last week. So like somehow it got out there. So I had my kids, I got them some framed jerseys from a trip we made to California a couple summers ago. And one of them was a Matthew Stafford jersey, which we took my kids to Rams camp. The Rams people were great with them. And they got my one son, Steven, got some autographs on a Stafford jersey. So I took a picture of the gifts because the guy who does the framing has been doing like framing work for us, which isn't easy. Has been doing like framing work for us. I mean, really, since we moved down here like 10 years ago, and they're awesome and they do a phenomenal job. So I was like, you know what? Like, let me take a picture and put it up on Instagram and like help this guy out a little bit, like
right.
I'm going to show everybody the great work that he's done. So maybe he gets some business off the notoriety, the little bit of notoriety that I have. Easy enough, right? So I posted that, the day after Christmas. Thanks for making my kids' Christmas a little merrier, with this work frame center in Hanover, Mass. Thank you. And so then Patriots fans got a hold out of it after Matthew Stafford threw 3 picks last Monday night and basically used it. And somebody they basically used it as you are not unbiased. You hate the Patriots. You hate Drake May. I hope you should die. I hope you never have a career again.
Oh,
yeah, and so it's like I did something nice for my kids, and these lunatics, this group of people decide, because I don't care if you take shots at me, but it's like now involving my kids.
Oh yeah,
and so like I just kind of like think about that. It's like, what has to run through someone's mind when they're doing that? You know what I mean? And like, you kind of feel bad for them at the end because it's like, and I hope Tyler Loop has this thought too, because I think it's like the grown-up way to look at it. Like, as long as there's no like real threat,
for sure.
Like you just like look at this and it's like, I kind of feel bad for you. Like I have teams that I root for. I have one team that I root for really hard where it affects my mood when they lose. I would never even entertain the thought of tweeting at a player. You know what I mean? Or tweeting at a coach. I would just never entertain that,
No.
So anyway, I don't know. I guess I probably shouldn't look at what was out there on Tyler Loop.
Oh
right?
my God. Just disgusting.
Yeah.
The worst piece of fan mail
I
I
mean,
ever got.
as if it isn't harder on him than it is on you.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. And like none of these dipshits are going to realize that kicking at Heinz Field in sub 30-degree temperatures on that rocky, chunky surface is like one of the hardest things to do in sports. And no one's going to give a shit about it. And obviously, it's a really hard thing to prepare for. Just very quickly, my worst piece
Boswell
of
missed the extra point, like,
and Boswell missed an extra point. Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like,
um, love Tomlin's celebration, by the way. Right after, like, this is how he drew it up. Let's have my defense get gouged and give up like 3 massively long touchdowns, but then we're going to depend on another guy.
And then give up 3 chunk plays and set them up for a reasonable field goal.
Yeah, and it's exactly how we drew it up, baby. But my worst piece of fan mail, and hopefully this brings solace to the Tyler Loops of the world, is on my wedding day. So speaking of Mike Tomlin, I was writing for NFL.com at the time, and I wrote something complimentary about his 4th down decision making. And this is back when 4th down, you never went for it on 4th and down. You just punted on 4th down, like blanket punted. But this was when the analytics kind of started to kind of get a groundswell. And I remember talking to some people from Princeton, and they were kind of the OGs of this idea that maybe you should start going for it. And so I wrote a little bit about that. And I wrote, the statistics support the decision to go for it on 4th down. Someone found my wedding page on the Knot. And the day after my wedding, my wife and I are up getting ready to go to our honeymoon. And just eating pizza on the couch. And I get an email that says, "You like statistics, huh? Well, here's one. 50% of marriages end in divorce. And I hope that yours is one of them."
That's pretty good. I mean, you got to hand it to the guy, right?
Right. I mean, it was, I still think about it. I don't know, once a week. And that guy occupies a rent-free space in my head. And I hope he
but
falls
when you're talking about like trolling or report, that's like a tape
that's
measure.
Different than there. Like I hope, again, the stuff with Loop was disgusting. And so my original point stands. If you're going to be funny about it, and not torture someone who's probably just in a very fragile mental space, cool. That's great. If you're going to do what you did to Tyler Loop yesterday, get out of here. You're not welcome. All right. Back to Black Monday. And I want to coin a new term, Albert, because it was Black Monday, but then I was looking for a color that started with the letter S that was almost as dark as black to go with Sunday. And so that's ship gray. Ship gray is almost black. So we had ship gray Sunday. I had
in my head like black in German, which I believe is Schwarz.
Oh, Schwarz Sunday. There you go.
Schwarz Sunday.
And we had Raheem Morris on Sunday. We had Kevin Stefanski, Pete Carroll, and Jonathan Gannon on Monday. And that brings us with Brian Dable and Brian Callahan to 6. I would say at this point, there's still probably some tough conversations being had with Todd Bowles as we're taping this. I don't know exactly where they go. I think that Mike Tomlin in TV is still a possibility, even though they've made the playoffs and they survived. And John Harbaugh is another one that, like, again, I think there's going to be some tough conversations, but at this point, we roll with the 6, and I want to break
Miami
them down
would be the one, but I don't anticipate that. Like, if you look at the people that they're interviewing for the GM job, a bunch of them line up with Mike McDaniel.
Yes.
And it just feels to me, at least, like they're going to set it up. Again, this is going to be like a Detroit type of model, a Rams type of model, a Panthers type of model, where you have like a cap operations analytics guy over here. That'll be Brandon Shore. You have the GM, who's ostensibly the head of scouting, and you have the head coach. And my guess would be, at this point at least, I know they're still going through, like, digging out from the season, and as far as their search goes, Steve Ross, his son-in-law Danny Silman, their team president Tom Garfinkel are all going to be involved. So they're still in the process of digging out from under the season, but it's the sense you get talking to people there is, when they come out, whether that's when they come out from under that work, whether it's Tuesday, Wednesday, that Mike McDaniel will probably still be the coach.
I think so too. Out of all of these, I would say if you were to rank them in terms of surprise, I thought Raheem Morris going as soon as he did. I thought that Terry Fontenot was definitely gone. I thought that Raheem probably had a puncher's chance to do the 1 year survive the GM thing, like Mike McDaniel might be doing down in Miami. And Jonathan Gannon was always a coin flip, right? But ultimately, and I guess I had been looking into it, but and Cardinals fans are probably going to be smashing their face against the desk when I say this because they know this better than anyone else. He's only had 3 wins against the NFC West since he's been there. And the last 4 games against these divisional opponents, he's given up at least 37 points. And I think in 3 of those 4 games, 40-plus points.
Yeah.
You're a defensive head coach. You're watching the rest of the division schematically escape you. And I just think that you couldn't sit on your hands there, right?
And to be fair, they've invested a lot in the defensive side of the ball. Like I think they've put less into the offense. Now there's been a few high draft picks, Marvin Harrison. They gave Trey McBride a contract. They drafted Paris Johnson early, but there has been a lot of investment from a monetary perspective on the defensive side of the ball, and so you would expect that part of the operation would be ahead, which I think is kind of why, one thing you heard leading into all of this was that, well, maybe Gannon could survive with staff changes. And there are 2 reasons why I don't think that wound up happening. Number one, I have a hard time seeing if it came to this, that Jonathan Gannon was going to say, oh yeah, go ahead and fire those 5 guys. No problem. Like, I think for all his faults, JG's loyal. And I think he might've been in a spot where he would go down with a ship.
Sure.
Number 2, like the name you heard most was Drew Petzing. Well, I don't think Petzing was really the problem,
Right.
So like, it's like, all right, like, well, you do that. Does that really fix anything? And if you've made this investment on defense and then you acknowledge the problem you've had on offense, primarily at quarterback, where does that leave you? And so, I'm with you. Like the JG firing doesn't shock me. I am a little more surprised with what happened in Atlanta.
Yeah. And
not totally, but I mean, we can go through that too. Like why that happened, why I think that happened the way it did.
So let's do that. Let's do the new openings first, and then we can kind of circle back to the Giants in Tennessee because we've had separate episodes on them in the past. You guys can go back through our timeline and do that, but we'll hit them here today as well. But I want to start in Cleveland, and Albert, I try not to be too magnanimous on days like this, and you try to take this year I had a concerted effort to kind of put the hot take in the back pocket and wait to see how the process plays itself out. However, in watching Andrew Berry deliver a press conference about firing Kevin Stefanski, a lot of what they seem to be looking for in a head coach is Kevin Stefanski.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if I were JW,
it was leadership, smarts, it was EQ, IQ, and football acumen, and then expertise on one side of the ball.
So
check.
2 things here. If I'm J.W. Johnson, who, for those of you who don't know, is one of the top-ranking officials in that organization, that Browns organization, he was the GM and head coach of the team's last search, which brought Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski together. I'd be pissed, man. Like, if you're J.W., you deserve credit. You hired the best coach in the new history of the Cleveland Browns, like in a quarter century, and there's been like 20 of them. And it's not even remotely close.
For the youngsters, by the way, new Browns means the Browns since 1999, and they were out of the league for 3 years there. But go ahead.
Correct. So I'd be like, okay. And my second theory, and I think I finally put my finger on this. I think the reason that the Browns and Andrew Berry had a good draft, but again, parenthetical, part of the reason some of these players from the 2025 draft played so well is because they were coached well, Albert.
They were developed. Yeah.
They were developed.
Yeah.
But I think I'm starting to get it. And I think that the reason that Andrew Berry is so valuable in Cleveland, Albert, is because he does an adequate job of intellectualizing the whims of ownership. And so it's like the Browns will always be the Browns, but now Andrew Berry kind of puts it in this neat Harvard box for everybody to be like, oh, okay, there seems to be a plan here. Whereas before it was like, good God, what's going on? And I think he's been good at that, but I think that this could be his last stand because this is Mayfield 2.0. Stefanski's going somewhere like now. And my guess is his dance card is going to be very full. He's going to interview thoroughly over the next couple weeks. If you're a team and you have a vacancy and you don't interview him, I think there's something wrong with you. And I think he's going to win wherever he goes.
I'll give you an anecdote, right? And I think that this kind of applies to this. And this is something we have to look at with the Browns, right? So I was talking to somebody from the Jets about interviewing Mike Vrabel. And you know what their conclusion was when they walked out of the interview room like last year?
What's that?
Why the fuck would you fire this guy?
It's true.
And I you know, and I thought about that a lot because, you know, things weren't perfect in Tennessee, right? And like there was a divide in that building and there were the Vrabel people and then the other side of it. And, you know, the owner comes in and she doesn't live there. And so for her, it's like, I'm coming. It's like, oh my God, like this does not feel healthy. You know, if she's in there once a week and doesn't have the full context of the whole thing, not realizing you have like you have a head coach who's like in the top 25% of the NFL, right? Like, and you're just looking at it through that prism of like, okay, like this doesn't seem healthy. So I need to blow it up.
Right.
And that's not the job of the owner. Like the job of the owner is to go in and look and say, okay, I've got good people here. Am I doing enough to make sure that these good people are in the best position to succeed? And if you look at the carnage in Tennessee, like who's the winner in all of that? Who looks best right now? Is it even close? I mean, Vrabel's running the score up on everybody else, right? Right. So what would have been best for the Titans in that situation?
I mean, obviously,
the owner to go in and figure it out,
right?
Instead of blowing it up,
right?
For the owner to go and say, like, I've got a freaking stud as a head coach, and I need to go out and find a way to make all this work. Now, time will tell with Kevin Stefanski. I think the reason they let him go, is because that relationship between coach and organization had gotten so tangled up by all the different things that had happened, and by the Deshaun Watson trade, and by the fact that he had this miraculous year in 2023 and was the coach of the year for the second time. And there were different timelines and different things. I mean, you think about the damage of the Watson trade, right? Like, just consider this, right? Okay. You're really for 3 years taking yourself off the quarterback market. So you're not looking at quarterbacks for minimum 3 years, right? Because you've invested so much in him. You have given up what? 20% of your cap space every year, right? On an annual basis, on average, 20% of your cap space every year, right? So there's a huge financial component to it that's going to live on from this point forward as well. And then you've killed your ability to draft because now there are 3 drafts where you don't have first round picks. So not only does that affect you in not having the first round picks, you're also less flexible. You might be taking more chances on guys because you've got less access to premium talent. So you've hurt yourself financially against the cap. You've hurt yourself financially in cash. You've hurt yourself from a draft perspective, and you've taken yourself off the quarterback market. And I think going through that, the whole group, which I think that they, over the years, have done a lot of things right, created a tangled up relationship. And I just think it got to the point where it's like there's been so much water that's gone under this bridge. Like, it's just too much. And we love Kevin. And I think, you know, Andrew Berry, Jimmy Haslam, J.W. Johnson, all those guys still love Kevin. Now, the question at the end of this is going to be, should you have done whatever it took to untangle that, or was it just at the point of no return? Because that's where I compare it to Vrabel. I think you look at the Vrabel situation and you look at like what Vrabel left behind and what's left of what he left behind now, just 2 years later. And it's very clear the answer was to just untangle everything yourself. You know, that they should have done. The question in this case, I think, is going to be whether you should have untangled the whole thing yourself or whether it was just time to say goodbye.
At this point,
And that, by the way, is going to be determined by how Andrew Berry does, how their new head coach does, how all the talent left behind does. That's what it's going to be determined by.
So in digging around, and I'm curious, bounce this off you as well. In digging around just preliminarily about the Browns opening, I've gotten like 2 hours of sleep. I can't speak at this point.
I'm with you.
Yeah. By the way, I was feeding my I have a 10-month-old, and she gets a bottle at like 9:00 in the morning, and then she goes down for a morning nap. And so I get everything done, wake up, in the morning, and you're doing stuff again, and you're making sure all your work is done from the night before, because I went to bed at like 3:00 in the morning. I'm feeding the baby a bottle. I put her down, and then I'm just like, let me just roll, because the crib's next to our bed. I'm like, let me just see how she's doing real quick. She's got a cold, and I want to listen to her for a second. And then all of a sudden I close my eyes and I wake up, and I've got like 3 missed phone calls, and it's like 11:15. So, I'm on that one of those days today. Like, I'm time traveling a little bit. But in checking around about the Browns situation, I had 3 kind of distinct theories presented to me. The first one is that you're going to roll with one of your coordinators. They like Tommy Rees and they love Jim Schwartz. And is that just what you do? I mean, Jim Schwartz fostered Myles Garrett's record-breaking season. It probably wouldn't be unpopular. He has head coaching experience, and I think he would fit the profile of that division in terms of a head coach. And then you just keep Tommy Rees as your offensive coordinator, if that's the direction you wanted to go. The second is that the Browns are poised to make the wild card hire of the cycle. And this is maybe where one of your off-ball...
Dion?
What's that? Oh, please. Stop it. Don't even do that.
Conor knows me well enough to know I'm a fan of chaos. So
I would cover I would go cover baseball, honestly, if that was the case. I would go into the office and I would say, please let me cover baseball. This is professional wrestling and I don't want to do this anymore. And the third theory was, maybe you try to hold on to your coordinators and you do almost what the Cowboys did, which is you just import Mike McCarthy into your vacant spot, right? Because
stabilize is like
stabilize, because the theory being, Albert, that this is not a job for a first timer. It's really not like at all. And if you're going to come in here as like a 1 or 2 year coordinator on either side of the ball, I think bullets are going to be flying, and this is a bad roster, and you're going to have to deal with the Shadur thing right away. Like, that's a no thanks to me. Hard no.
I think the only time they ever hired a guy with head coaching experience was Hugh Jackson, right? The Haslam, because they inherited Pat Shurmur, fired him. They hired Rob Chudzinski, fired him. They hired Mike Pettin, I think was next, fired him. They hired Hugh Jackson. That obviously didn't work out. Greg Williams was the interim, if I remember right, that year.
Yeah.
So that doesn't really count.
Eric Mangini was a head coach.
No, but that was before they were there. So like that was the old owner.
Oh, yes. Yep.
So, and then 19 was Freddie and 20 was Kevin. So they've only really done it with Hugh Jackson, right? Of all their hires. I understand what you're saying, and I think it'd be interesting to look into Andrew Berry's background, right? And where can we find somebody in Andrew Berry's background that makes sense as somebody? And that's the trouble, is like the Eagles. Like, if you want to say, okay, like, he was with Philly for a short time. Like, what is that, Doug Peterson then? I mean, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I think you'd have to.
He was with the Eagles in 2019, and he was with the Browns before that, and then the Colts for 6 years. And so I actually went through like all 6 or 7 years of that Colts
for me. Yeah. So it was
roster.
He was there under Bill Polian and Jim Caldwell, I believe, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, the one connect that I found to, like, let's say an up and coming, so Harold Goodwin, who's with the Panthers now, was on a couple of those Colts staffs, and he's a big part of Brad Idzik's offensive staff in Carolina.
Yeah.
And Brad is like a young kind of up and comer, and that turnaround in Carolina was really impressive. And maybe the Browns see some parallels there. That was my big kind of takeaway, Albert. I mean, this was like a Pagano team, an Arians team. Like a lot of these people from Indianapolis have kind of phased out at that point in time, you know?
Yeah. And I'm just sort of interested to see. Okay, so
and that Eagles team that he was on was not very good either. I mean, it was a 9-7. I guess they won the division, but
I mean, well, you talk about taking a big swing though. Are you saying like college then?
So Atlanta was the one team that everybody thought when I talked to last night that they could go college. But if you're Cleveland, maybe you go college too. I just don't know who's left. Like who in college hasn't signed a mega extension yet?
Right. And then you have to be willing to pay the buyout, which is
Sark the only one that hasn't signed like a big I'm not going anywhere extension yet? Elko did. Ryan Day. Yeah.
I mean, maybe if you wanted to look at something like that, they do have a relationship with people at Ohio State. Like I do, like I think eventually, like Ryan's going to be on the radar. I don't know that it'll be this year, but like eventually, like, and I don't think that'll happen now. But there aren't a ton of names. Like the one name that I'm intrigued by is Signetti, just because what he's done is so ridiculous. It's like one of the best coaching jobs I've ever seen in any sport in my lifetime. And when I've talked to people, I was actually asked a mailbag question about him maybe 2 months ago. And so I asked around, I called some of the guys I know who are on the college scouting trail, have been through there. And the universal answer that I got was, this guy is like Saban to a T, right? So does that work now? He's 64 years old, so you have to be comfortable with that. And you have to pay, I think, a $15 million buyout. He just signed a new deal there. But, I don't know. I mean, it's just such a weird year because we don't have a lot of obvious candidates, Yeah. And you start to go down like the Vance Joseph, guys who've been former head coaches, Matt Nagy, that could be in that mix. Robert Saleh, sort of could be an interesting one.
And he interviewed for their head coaching job the last time.
And did well, if I remember
and did
right.
well,
Too.
yes.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I think you have to kind of go into this with an open mind. There's just not an obvious one. And I do think this is one, I would argue that might be the best football city in America. It is phenomenal. Far as how the fan base is locked in, the knowledge of the fan base, it is, if you win there, you will be a hero forever. They'll build a statue of you in front of the stadium. So you have to want that. You know what I mean? It's like Philly or Chicago. You have to want that level of scrutiny, where every game is a referendum on you and you have to shake off the history. You know what I mean? In all the bad history of the last, 25 years, since they came back into the league, are you willing to inherit that, embrace that, take that on, and ultimately defeat it?
Yeah.
And can you count on a 40-year-old guy who's only called one side of the ball? I'm going to bring his name up a lot, but will Hafley make sense as a guy who's been a head coach before?
Yeah. I mean, I think he fits there too. So, I mean, Cleveland, it's just
the other one. So they love Ivy League guys, right?
See if Matt, no, it wasn't Matt Burke. Who am I thinking of? Yeah, Matt Burke. Yeah.
Who is also, by the way,
tied to Jim Schwartz.
A Jim Schwartz guy.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's one to me that I think if you've ever been around Matt, he's very, he's defiant, you know what I mean? And he's very much he's kind
perfect
of
for Cleveland.
Perfect for Cleveland in that way. Yeah. I think he'd be a good fit for that place. He's got a little bit of the screw loose defensive coach thing while still being an Ivy Leaguer. Right. Matt Burke would be an interesting one for sure.
Let's move over to the Falcons, because what really interests me about this Atlanta job, and I think now that you have Matt Ryan in the building, I don't think that there's any way.
Oh my God. I may have found something, by the way.
What's that?
When did Andrew Berry play at Harvard?
When did Andrew Berry play at Harvard? I don't know.
Well, Matt Burke was an assistant coach there in 2003.
Aha. Well, I'm glad I put him on my short list yesterday.
I think Andrew Berry might be a little younger than that. Give me a second here, but I think, but doesn't say here. He was born in 87. So yeah, he would have been 16 in 2003. So that doesn't match up. Oh, well.
Nearly a
close.
But at the same time, it's something that Barry that's in his network, right? You can go and you can ask about him, and
his college head coach, who I think would have been Tim Murphy at Harvard, would have employed Matt Burke. So there is a connection there.
So Atlanta, I think, is interesting to me because, with Matt Ryan in the fold there, Albert, I just don't think that there's any way this team isn't looking at an offensive focused head coach, because Matt Ryan, I think, will go in and he will tell you, having played for Kyle Shanahan, that this is the way, right? I mean, this is the way. And
so you nailed it there, because I think that you have to judge these guys based on their experiences. And he had his greatest success under Kyle Shanahan.
100%.
And things went south for what was a very successful program when not only Kyle Shanahan, but Matt LaFleur and Mike McDaniel left that building.
100%. And I think that when that informs your knowledge base, I think, and it's crazy because, Albert, a lot of this is still true. Like, Clint Kubiak goes to Seattle and fixes that offense. Like, everywhere these guys go, it works and they succeed. And like, Liam Cohen is in Jacksonville and turn that place around. It's like, if you're from the McVay tree, if you're from the Shanahan tree, it works. I mean, these guys aren't getting fired. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. Yeah, they're retained. Zach Taylor is still the head coach of the Bengals. Really, I mean, I guess you could say that Zach Robinson is like the one person from that McVay tree that hasn't.
How badly did he fail?
And how badly did he fail? Not really.
I mean, like, I don't know. Like, I have a hard time hanging that on him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think he's still a good coach. Like, I don't know. I think first we should do the background here, which is why, what I think happened with Raheem, right? Like, and this is just, I want to make sure I couch this the right way, Connor. This is informed speculation. Okay.
Right.
All right. But I was a little surprised, right? Like, cause I had heard over the last couple of weeks, Raheem could survive. Terry's probably gone, but Raheem's could survive. So why didn't he? Well, they brought in Sportology 2 months ago. And we reported on it to start doing a health check on their whole operation. Sportology is run by the former head of Chelsea FC. So, like, what they were looking to do ostensibly was get a outside view, a view of people from other sports into their NFL operation. And unsurprisingly, what those guys came back with was, you should have an over-the-top guy and a president of football ops, much like you have a president of basketball ops in the NBA now, right? Or a president of baseball ops. I think they even have like chief baseball officer now in Major League Baseball. Is that right? Something like that, right? So you go down the road on that, and you spend 2 months with Sportology as they do this like health check on your football operation. And so you've been talking to them for 2 months. And I think, like, it eventually gets to the point, and I want to hear your take on this. I think eventually it gets to the point where it's like, it's not like keeping Raheem anymore. It's preventing us from going forward with this plan that they're starting to put in place. You know what I mean? Like, and like Raheem Morris and Terry Fontenot may have been fired in these guys' heads 6, 7, 8 weeks ago. And they were going forward and building something new. So that by the time you got to the last 2 weeks of the regular season, it's not, do we keep Raheem Morris? It's, do we really want to veer from what we've already been doing for the last 2 months?
Right.
Saying? And I think that's sort of it. Like, I think that's why Raheem in particular kind of had like an uphill climb that he was looking at there.
I just think that if you're not aligned, and this is like corpo speak at this point, but you can go back to you can trace teams' lineages back to the moments where it's like, well, okay, I had a GM here and then a new head coach here, and then I got rid of that GM, and then got a new GM, and then got rid of that coach, and then you play this game of Jenga to the point where you're just completely dovetailed, and you lose all sense of self and who you are. And I think Atlanta, first and foremost, wanted to hit a hard reset on that. And I think that they wanted two guys to come in together with the same idea, because we can say what we want
Although I would say this, though, it has worked. So
it has worked.
If we take the 4 top seeds, right, in the playoffs, right, it is Denver, New England, Seattle, and Chicago. None of those 4 have a coach and GM that came in the same hiring cycle, and in fact, 3 of the 4 had GMs that were hanging on and then wound up inheriting the head coach, right? So that's Ryan Poles with Ben Johnson. That's Elliot Wolf with Mike Vrabel. And that's George Payton with Sean Payton, right? The one that's not quite the same as that is Seattle, because John Schneider did hire Mike McDonald. You know what I mean? So John Schneider had won a Super Bowl, so it was a completely different situation. But I do think, like, we've seen now a few examples of where it can work. I'm with you though. You are to some degree threading the needle. And I think it's much harder to do keeping the coach and the GM than the other way around. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Because I think if you're hiring a new GM and keeping the coach is immediately under evaluation. And that makes it more difficult because now you're going to have trust issues right from the beginning. The minute something goes wrong, the first thing the coach is going to think is I'm cooked here,
I'm looking at the Falcons, and so I put together kind of a short list of coaches who I think would fit that job, Albert. And it's harder, right? If you're going offense first, this is a difficult ask because again, I mean, this is not your typical 5 hot coordinators market. But here's what I would say for Atlanta in particular. I think that Cliff is interesting to me because I think that he could run an offense for Penix that might get him out of his head and might get him just playing a little bit faster. Falcons didn't run a lot of sugar huddle or tempo stuff with Penix. Ryan Grubb did a lot of tempo stuff with Penix at Washington. And I think that that's something, worth mentioning. Clint Kubiak is another one, Albert. And here's why I think this is interesting. So I don't know let's go back to when the Falcons hired Raheem Morris. There was a candidate who had 2 interviews. Second one at Arthur Blank's house. Second one went very long to the point where I thought he might have gotten the job. Do you know who I'm talking about? It wasn't Raheem Morris. Who was it?
What, Belichick? Wait, say it again. So
the last time that the Falcons hired a head coach, Raheem Morris, they went deep with Belichick. They went deep with Raheem Morris. They also went deep with another offensive-minded coach who got a second interview. And I think the second interview...
Bobby Slowick, was it?
It was Bobby Slowick, right?
Okay.
And so...
I was going to say, I want to make sure I had that right,
Yeah. And so Bobby got pushed out in Houston, and he ended up going to Miami, where he's kind of revived himself there, and I think is a super important part of that staff, and I think is kind of a de facto offensive coordinator for McDaniel there too. But I think what the Falcons were enamored with was that Shanahan philosophy, where it's you have to understand both sides of the ball deeply in order to attack a team well offensively, and Slowick started on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, Kubiak is one of those guys, Albert, that you're born with a football under your arm. You're going to be able to understand this at a different level. And maybe that's a place where Kyle advises him or somebody in his network to be like, listen, this is not a job that you pass up. You take the Falcons job and you run with it.
Yeah. So I like that. I like the idea of it. I do think looking at connections here is important too. And so Matt Ryan's Boston College ties, I think could be a factor here.
Interesting.
At both general manager and head coach.
Okay.
So number one, general manager, Ian Cunningham has been in the running for a bunch of these, has been on the doorstep. Ian Cunningham's boss is Ryan Poles, who was Matt Ryan's right guard at Boston College, and they were in each other's weddings. So,
hello.
like, I do think like Ryan Poles would naturally be one of the people that Matt is going to lean on in learning how to do the job, right? So that's something to consider. Do you know who another one of Matt Ryan's Boston College teammates was? See if you can get this one.
Is this person a coaching candidate or a GM candidate?
Coaching candidate.
Right, another one of Matt Ryan's BC teammates. How old is Matt Ryan?
He was the draft class of 2008. I believe Matt's 5 years younger than me, so he would be right at 40, 41 years old, right in there somewhere.
He's 5 years younger than you, and he's 40. Holy shit! How old are you?
I know. Got to do this again.
I don't know. Who is it?
Brian Flores.
Ah, okay.
So, I think that's at least interesting.
Yeah,
you know, because Matt Ryan played against Belichick. He went to college in Boston at the height of the Patriot dynasty. He was drafted by a former Patriot executive in Thomas Dimitroff. So there are all these ties, and a guy he played college football with, and Brian Flores. And I just, I've thought a lot about like where Flo is going to get his next shot. I for a long time felt like, God, Baltimore would be interesting for Flores. You know what I mean? But this is one where I look at it and I'm like, man, like a lot of those things line up, and I wonder if Matt Ryan looks at this and says, like, we can figure out offense. Flo's worked with some good offensive coaches. Maybe he can bring Josh McCown with him from Minnesota to be his offensive coordinator, or like Kevin O'Connell will let Wes Phillips leave to go call plays in Atlanta.
I like that.
We can do something here. We've got like, and I don't know. I look at it and it's like, man, like, you're talking about the connections that Matt Ryan has. And there are two guys in Ian Cunningham and Brian Flores who are would both be coming from the NFC North, who faced off against each other, who like he's going to have the best information on, right? Because of his own personal relationships with, in one case, the guy, and then in the other case, the guy's boss. It's just like that lines up. And if you're talking about alignment, and I think that Matt is going to prioritize alignment. In fact, like last week when I was talking to somebody about this opening and we were talking about Raheem surviving, this one person said to me, it's like, I don't know about that. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Because I there's this whole thing out there the last couple of weeks about Matt's involvement in this. And like, it's like, if you look at Raheem and Terry, like, well, he was with Raheem for 5 years in Atlanta. Like Raheem was on the staff for 5 years when Matt was the quarterback. And then Terry came in and traded Matt. Right. So like there was that thought process. Okay. Like maybe he keeps Raheem and walks away from Terry. But this one person said to me, Matt is going to prioritize alignment. It's going to be the most important thing to him because he's seen how it works when you have things aligned, and he's seen how it works when you don't.
Right.
So like the idea of being able to create that level of alignment, I think is going to be really important. Now, I don't know. Like, I mean, Ian Cunningham and Brian Flores haven't worked together, right? And they've got different backgrounds. Brian Flores' background is New England, but he's been a head coach before. Ian Cunningham's background is Baltimore and Philly. But you're bringing in like a lot of good systems, and maybe you can project that out a little bit because you do have such strong personal ties to the two guys. It's something that gets my attention, and you can take the Boston College thing to another level too. Obviously Matt Ryan's going to be able to get every in and out on who Jeff Hafley is, because Jeff Hafley, the back coordinator, was the coach at Boston College. But I think there are at least some interesting options where Matt Ryan's going to come into this job, and I expect that he'll have the sort of humility that John Elway had, and kind of like coming in and like knowing he doesn't know everything. He's leaning on some of those people. There are some interesting potential arrangements there, I'd say.
I like that. We have the Cardinals now and the Raiders that I want to touch on briefly before we get out of here. Arizona is one you and I talked about this a couple weeks ago on the podcast that if Jonathan Gannon went, that this is probably your opportunity to take a big swing because you have all these other coaches in your division who are just so good and
Yeah.
so lights out. And, maybe Flores is one of those guys where, he can stop the bleeding for you a little bit. And
And they liked him a lot. They were the first team to interview Flores
yes,
in 2018. So
and he got a second interview, I believe, when Gannon got the job as well and pulled out, if
yeah,
I'm not mistaken, to take the job in Minnesota. So we have Flores there. We have Vance Joseph, I think, being a strong candidate there because Michael Bidwell will remember that when Cliff Kingsbury came in, I mean, Vance had to do a lot of head coach stuff. And so Vance was essentially like a de facto head coach of that team or
yeah.
like associate head coach for a long time. And I think he'd audition there. But I want to talk about the swings, okay? Because I think that this is a place where you and I brought up Grant Udinski. Maybe this is the place where you interview Grant Udinski, you interview Declan Doyle,
Davis Webb.
Davis Webb. I think too, and I mean, the staff on Seattle is so interesting to me.
Phillip Rivers.
Well, yeah. I mean, that thing has kind of come out of, but to that point, Albert, I put Josh McCown on my list. Okay. He was drafted by the Cardinals.
That. Like, I actually think, I think Josh got dragged a little bit, like when the Houston thing was happening a few years ago.
Yeah.
And like, that wasn't necessarily really his fault. That was just a really messed up situation there that he was caught in the middle of.
Right.
But now he's got like real coaching experience. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't think it's the craziest thing in the world. He's been working under Kevin O'Connell, who they don't have identical backgrounds, but it's not that different. They were both backup quarterbacks in the league and always had an intention to coach and, had kind of built, it built towards that even when they were playing, both those guys. And so I think Josh McCown would make a lot of sense. If I were them, that's someone I would really look at. I think Davis Webb would make a lot of sense. Yep. I think it's important that we say this again, because I know we said it the last time, but I think like the girl who got away for Michael Bidwell will always be Sean McVay.
Yep.
Right. And that they identified him early. And they were, I think Sean was 29 when Steve Keim was like, this guy is the next guy, And if I remember right, I can't remember exactly how the timing worked, but the timing didn't quite work out for them. However it was, whether it was, I can't remember if Arians retired a year later, whatever it was, it didn't quite line up the right way for them to do it. But there had been that thought process that this is the next guy. And then, the Rams swoop in and hire him when he's 30 and the rest is history. And so who fits that mold? And it's the guys we're talking about, you know? So not all the same. You've got the ex-player category and Webb and McCown. And then you got like some of the younger offensive assistants like the Udinski, who I don't necessarily think is ready yet, but a lot of people would have said McVay wasn't ready,
100%. And you pair him with Wes Phillips or Wade Phillips, and you go. I mean, that's how it works. You give him a vet, show him the ropes.
Is Wade still? I love Wade. Wade's one of my favorite people I've ever covered. Is Wade 100%. Still covered? Is he still coaching the Roughnecks? He was the Cowboys coach when I was on the beat down there. Love Wade.
Oh,
he great. Is a. I cannot say enough nice things about Wade Phillips. Just forget about the football part of it. Just a unbelievable human being. A great guy.
Two more names for the Arizona Cardinals. One is a name that I'm like, it is getting out there slowly now and is sort of making me not mad because I'm happy with, like, this is the thing about doing the head coaching thing. It's like seeing them all like get to, it's like all your pupils getting to grow up and have like fun and like all these people that you obsess over and learn over, and then they all end up getting big jobs and then you're very happy about. But two names in particular that I think would be interesting, but I haven't heard anything directly connected to. The first one is Clayton Adams. And I think that Clayton Adams, he was in Arizona the previous 2 seasons, went to Dallas to become the offensive coordinator. That's a top 5 unit in the NFL, by the way. One of the best rushing success rates in the NFL.
And
when
the
he left,
young talent they've developed there. I mean,
yeah.
I would say, I can't reveal my votes, but Tyler Booker got all pro mention as a rookie, and we know what Tyler Smith is. He's another all pro level player. Cooper Beebe's developed at center. I think they got a better level player when he's healthy, at least out of Tyler Guyton. Like the arrow's pointing up on that group, and Clayton Adams is a huge part of it for sure.
Yep. He is one of the 5 best offenses in terms of rushing efficiency this year. And when he left Arizona, I mean, that unit fell apart. And so I think it's very obvious. And Monty Ossenfort certainly had a front row seat to that. And the other one is Adden Dirty from Seattle. And I'm so this name has sort of come on my radar a little bit late in the process. And some people are being like, it's next year, or it might be the year after that. But this guy is a dude. And
it'd be great. Like I like Aiden a lot. Like he's got like the British accent, which would be like charming.
He would be the first, I believe, would he be the first? Certainly the first English-born head coach, but would he be the first
foreign-born? I have to think somebody was born on like a military base in Germany or something. You know what I mean? Like. There's got to be somebody who was
right, but who like lived a significant portion of their life.
He actually grew
up in another place. I don't know. Well, we could look into that, but a lot of people are raving about him. And again, if you're the Cardinals and you don't,
dude, I love AI. I just Googled foreign-born NFL head coaches. All right. The 3 examples that came up. I just think this is funny. While rare foreign-born NFL head coaches do exist, with notable examples like Tom Fears, Mexico, and figures with international heritage like Robert Saleh, Lebanese descent, and coaches whose parents have immigrated like Steve Mariucci. Like,
okay. Thanks, AI. Glad we're just knocking down.
It does
Forrest.
mention Aiden Durde, so like I like good for Aiden being in there. I guess not. I don't know. I mean, I don't know why Mike McDaniel is in this thing, but like as growing international presence, I guess. I don't know.
Glad we're knocking down forests to build data centers so that we can have more shit like this to fuck up our day. Anyway, I think this is it's a pivotal search for Arizona, and I still stand by my thought that they need to take that swing, or you go with Vance Joseph or Brian Flores to just stabilize that.
Flores, I mean, we should mention too. Like we should mention too. Flores has a connection to Monty Ossenfort. They came up together in the New England personnel department. Yeah.
Last but not least, we have the Raiders, and then we'll touch on the Giants and Titans just very quickly before we get out of here. But the Raiders, Albert, I mean, you nailed it, I think, a couple weeks ago when you talked about John Spytek, Tom Brady, and Jesse Minter having the Michigan connection. And then there's Tom Brady having the Brian Flores and Brian Dable and the Patriots connection. And then there's the Raiders having the Robert Saleh connection. They offered him a lot of money to be the defensive coordinator. I think that's where this search kind of starts and ends, somewhere within that pair of parentheses. Do you think I'm wrong?
Yeah, I think like this has got to be bigger than that, though. They need to align that place.
Yep.
And I think, it's so interesting because Tom Brady came from a place in New England where Scott Pioli, who drafted him, had this saying that like became like kind of the one line description of how they were building. It was, we're building a team, we're not collecting talent, right? And I think last year the Raiders collected talent. They were Pete Carroll, good program leader. We'll keep Pat Graham, even though he doesn't run the same system as Pete Carroll. And who cares if Pete Carroll subscribes to what Chip Kelly's doing offensively? Like we just want to get the best coach available, so we'll pay him $6 million a year. And then Pete Carroll, of course, had his ideas on how the defense wanted to run, how the offense wanted to run, and it made everyone miserable because everyone has their own ideas how they want to do it, and they're trying to fit it into what somebody else is doing. And this isn't Pete's fault. This is just the situation that they were in. I think it created issues on that coaching staff. And, then you point to the fact that Pete had two of his sons on that staff. And now they're learning, all those coaches are learning to work with John Spytek and the personnel department he's put together. You have people in the building who are reporting to Alex Guerrero, so that's part of it as well. I just think they need to find a way to make sure, and I use that word alignment, and it is a buzz term, a cliche, whatever you want to call it, but, like with the Falcons, it's the same thing with the Raiders. Like, how is that whole thing going to line up, and how do they get everybody on the same page there? Because that thing, like, I've talked to people who are in that building who said it was just a mess this year, and there are, veteran coaches, good coaches who are there, who won't be there anymore, who would tell you that was about as weird a place to work this year as they've ever been in. And like, they need to find a way to figure that out and make sure that with the next group, everyone's on the same page. And because what they had this year was not it.
I think this is one that, and I'll just bring this up because I think it's interesting, and I'm just going to leave it there. And then we're going to talk about the Giants and the Titans just very quickly. Nick Caserio is now viewed as one of the best executives in the NFL, and rightfully so. He's done a great job turning the Texans around.
I mean, dude, their roster, by the way, I just will say this, like, as I'm filling out my all-pro ballot, the amount of Texans players that came up was mind-blowing. It was like on defense, like every position. Yeah, it was just like holy crap, like the amount of guys that they have that are at that level is wild. He's done an unbelievable job.
So, with that in mind, Albert, I think we conveniently forget that some of the what helped ultimately build this roster was hiring David Culley to a non-traditional 2-year contract and firing him after a year, and then hiring Lovie Smith and essentially doing the same thing and bottoming out the organization. If you're Brady and you go from Pete Carroll after 1 year and you have the number 2 overall pick, or the number 1 overall pick, and all of a sudden, whatever happens during this cycle, and we're just looking at each other like, who the hell are they hiring? I mean, do you draw the parallels between that at all? I mean, Brady worked with Nick Caserio. He sees what's happening in Houston. I mean, if you're the Raiders and you don't get your guy again, and the Raiders missed their guy last year, do you just throw up your hands and be like, you know what, let's just crash this thing like the plane in Lost, and then we'll figure it out in a couple of years? I mean, I'm just saying, Houston now, the Deshaun Watson trade's a big part of it, but David Culley and Lovie Smith are a big part of that too, Right.
And it took time for them. And look, they're probably, the experience that D'Amico Ryan's got in the interim, in those 2 years running Kyle Shanahan's defense in San Francisco is probably serving him really well. I haven't asked him about it, but I'm sure it's serving him really well now, in Houston. And so there's that piece of it too, is I don't know. I think we all viewed Pete Carroll as not an interim, but a guy who, was going to have to hand the baton off relatively soon. And so who's the next guy? And they didn't really have that guy on staff, and they wanted that guy to be Saleh. And so, yeah, I think you have to view this as we have a chance to, while we're building, take a swing on a young guy, figure some things out as we go. You have a little bit of runway to do that here because of where the franchise is. So, and you also have hanging over this whole thing, the fact that you got the number 1 overall pick,
Right. So I don't know. New England's going to be interesting because Tom Brady makes them interesting, Albert. And
Vegas, you mean, not New England, Vegas.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah.
All good.
Yeah. Not Freudian.
It's been a long 24 hours.
It's been a long 24 hours.
48 hours, 72 hours, whatever it's been.
Before we get out of here, Titans had their first slate of interview requests. I think Anarumo, Matt Nagy, Vance Joseph. Not a lot of surprises there. And the Giants are kind of waiting in the wings here with Kevin Stefanski now available. I would guess, Albert, that Stefanski lands in either the Giants or the Titans. That would just be my very early wager.
Yeah.
Would you say that's correct?
I think he's a perfect fit for the Giants, and
I do too.
He's almost like ready made. If you're looking at like what a Giants coach is, like he kind of feels like he fits the suit there, and he's hiring him as an investment in your young quarterback too, and figuring out just where you can go with Jackson Dart. I think from that perspective for Kevin, it would be attractive, just in that he dealt with such a weird quarterback situation over his 6 years in Cleveland that it'd probably be refreshing to go to a place where it's just, okay, just develop this guy and let's see what we've got, I think that makes sense for a ton of different reasons. I think the Titans are going to cast a wide net. I'd expect Halfley, Nagy, I think Minter, just trying to think. Vance Joseph's name is already out there. Chris Shula will be involved in that one. So they've got a relatively long list. And, I think that there's that feeling like we do need to bring in somebody with experience after what we just went through with Brian Callahan. But I don't think that they're ruling, some of the young defensive names out. Again, that's one where Halfley kind of threads the needle a little bit, and that he is a young defensive coach and still has a lot of good years in front of him and a lot of room for improvement, but he has been a head coach before.
Yeah. I mean, I view Halfley more as a generalist that happens to have a defensive background versus a specific defensive coordinator, which is why I think he's been LaFleur's best hire at the defensive side of the ball since he's had that job. So that's what we're looking at, Albert. It's going to be a long couple of weeks here, and I don't anticipate any more moves. Famous last words. But
I don't know. Baltimore is going to be. I think Baltimore will probably hang over us.
Yep.
I would. That feels to me a little bit like this is a Wednesday, Thursday, either statement that he's coming back or something else, maybe. But I would think that probably that feels like the type of situation that maybe takes a couple days to sort out. Like we said, the Dolphins isn't completely in the clear, but trending that way. And Tampa would be the other one that we haven't heard from fully, at least yet.
We will see, and we will be back with you guys on Thursday. Break that down, preview the playoffs, button up everything from the rest.
We got one thing that we want to just mention here really quick.
What's that?
So Art Stapleton, veteran Giants writer.
Yeah, baby.
Went in the locker room and asked Jameis Winston about Kevin Stefanski. Here's Jameis. Coach Stefanski is a brilliant offensive mind, great leader. He would be an asset for any team as a head coach. Would Stefanski work here? Art Stapleton asked. Absolutely. He can lead anywhere.
Okay.
So, take it to the bank, man. If Jameis says it, I'm on board.
Okay. I mean, you heard it there. I think that the Giants will take that and absolutely motor with it. And, because, again, when you're eating dubs, you should be able to also pick head coaches. And I think we've always known that about Jameis Winston. Thank you guys for everything. Thanks for listening. Happy New Year. If you haven't come back to the pod since we started taping again, we've missed you. And we'll see you later on this week.